In this video, I want to talk to you about an emergency fund. The reason for this is that I had a conversation with my son the other day and he brought this back up. It was something we talked about 4 years ago when he was buying his first house. And so I thought that since it's just on my mind, I might as well talk to you about it today. And here's the thing. There was a time when I didn't know what an emergency fund was. In my days when I was at home with my parents, they called it rainy day money. Money that you put aside so that if anything bad happened, you had some. Now, when I talk about my family, we were one of those families that used envelopes. So there was an envelope for electric and an envelope for gas and an envelope for water and so on. There were envelopes for everything, and money used to get put into the envelopes to pay the monthly bills. And it was something that I took on when I first got married. And my parents drummed into me this emergency fund thing. And to be honest, I didn't have one for years. But it did come back to bite me. So what is an emergency fund? I like to think of it as a pillow, and it protects me from the emergencies of life, if you like. It sits there and surrounds me so that when the emergencies come at me, it's not like being punched in the stomach so much. So what are those punches that come into the pillow? Well, just imagine you go out today in your car and you're driving along the road nicely, and all of a sudden something goes bang. You take it into the garage, and when it's in there, they look it over and say, right, this is going to cost you £500 to repair. Have you got the money packed away that you can afford to spend and pay for the car straight away? Most of us, the answer is no, because we haven't been able to pack that money away. Just imagine that you're not well and you have to take time away from work. And not only do you have to take time away from work for a short while, say it's a couple of weeks, a month, maybe 2 months. If you lose that money from work, how secure is your home? Could you carry on paying your payments for the house or your rent, should that happen and it becomes extended? If not, you're in problems. Just imagine you're in your home and all of a sudden your boiler goes wrong, just when you want it, putting the heating on when it's cold. Could you afford to spend that money to get it repaired and get it done? Probably not for most people, because a lot of people aren't in the position to pull out that kind of money and just pay for it. And that's why you need an emergency fund. So I suppose the question is this: would you rather save money and pack it away bit by bit for an emergency fund? Or would you rather have to go to your credit card and pay to get all of those things done on your credit card with whatever the percentage is on it? I know it's not cheap, because then when you do that, you pay the bill out of the way, that's fine. But then for most people, they just pay the interest on the card, so they never really get to the debt. And so having an emergency fund becomes really important. So how much would you need in an emergency fund? Well, I look at it this way. If you don't have a lot of money and you're not on a good wage, then your emergency fund, for the first part, you need to get it to around £1,000. £1,000 will cover a lot of little expenses that you're not expecting and will just save you worrying. But beyond that, if you get to £1,000, that's brilliant. But you really need to push on and get yourself into the position where you've got between 3 months and 6 months of all of your bills paid. So you put that money away so that if, for example, you lost your job and you were out of work for 4 or 5 months, that you had enough money packed away in your emergency fund to tide you over, to pay your electric, to pay your gas, to pay your rent or mortgage, to pay for food, to pay for things that the kids need. All that sort of thing is why you need an emergency fund. Because I read somewhere, I can't remember where, but they were saying that if you lost your income for a couple of months, 90% of people would end up homeless. How scary is that? And that's a really hard one to comprehend. I know it was for me. But how do you do it? If you're stretched and you get to the end of the month and you've run out of money 2 days before, how are you going to save money? Well, to be honest with you, I think that most of us spend money that we don't need to. My mum and dad used to call it living within your means. If you can't afford it, don't buy it. My mum and dad were very much like that. They never, ever bought anything unless they had the money to do it and could afford to do it. They never had credit cards. And it was a good lesson to learn. I know that I had them. I did get into debt. Unfortunately, I managed to pay them off. But the minute I paid them off, I cut them all up because they frightened me. I didn't like being in that debt. And so how are you going to do it? In this day and age, most of us take things for granted. I think it's the way we've been fortunate enough to be brought up. But how many times do you go into a Costa or a Starbucks and buy whatever your drink of choice is? I wouldn't mind betting that if you do that 2 or 3 times a week, you're going to spend 20 to 30 quid a month just in Starbucks or Costa. Sweets. Oh, I love sweets. I'm terrible for sweets. But I'll tell you this, when times are hard, I can manage without them. Subscriptions for Netflix and Prime and Paramount and whatever one you want. If you're tight for money, get rid of them because that money can put you in that position. I want to talk about my son again. He didn't get it when I said to him, the only problem with buying a house is that it's not what you think. It's not an asset. Well, not for the 20 or 30 years until you've paid for it, because up until then, it's just another debt around you. And I said to him, you've got to start packing some money away. He did. He started putting away a certain amount of money every week. He's very fortunate. He still gets paid weekly. And he put money away on a weekly basis. And I was talking to him a couple of weeks ago, and he's now in the process of upgrading his house and moving to another one. And he was telling me that he'd paid what he thought was all of his solicitor bills. And when it came to it, he hadn't paid enough. There were 2 bills, one for the house he's buying and one for the house he's just sold. He'd paid for the one he'd just sold. He hadn't paid for that. And he hadn't realised. He thought that the bill they'd sent him was enough. And it turned out it wasn't. It was a rather nice little lump that they wanted again. And he was talking to me the other day and he said, you know what, Dan, I'm glad I started that emergency fund because when that other bill came in, I had enough to just draw it out and pay it. And that's a great thing to hear your son say, I tell you. For myself, I haven't got a massive fund, but I do put money into it every week. For us, I put in either 30 or 40 pounds a week just to keep it going. Is it massive, my emergency fund? Nah, not really. It's big enough and it comes in useful. There have been times in the last 6 months when I've needed to dip into it to pay a bill. because I'm not rich. I'm not overly endowed in money. And so that emergency fund becomes really important. So really all I can say to you is this. If you don't have at least £1,000 packed away for an emergency, then you need to start one. And when you do not put it with your other money in the bank, because it can easily be wheedled away. What you need to do with it is open another account, or perhaps add a savings account to the account you already have. And when you put the money over there, that money you don't touch unless it's an emergency. And I'm talking about a proper emergency. Pack that away. Get it to £1,000 as quickly as you can. The way I did it, I used to do things like the lottery. And I used to do, I don't know, probably £10 a week I was spending on that. So I stopped the lottery, and instead of doing that, I put £10 into the emergency fund. Each week, that was £40 a month. Simply done. I didn't miss it. If you're spending 20, 30 quid on subscriptions for TV channels, use that. Pack that away. Squirrel it away until you've got £1,000. Once you've got £1,000, you've got your start. But it's really important to carry on. Try and build it up. And I can honestly say to you that it makes your life a little less pressured. It makes you feel better knowing that should your car blow up tomorrow, you've got money put by to have it repaired. Not only that, something happened to me 9 years ago. My car blew up. It blew up to a point that to put the clutch in it was going to cost more than the car was worth. And so I ended up using some emergency money to actually buy a car, because I didn't want to buy one with a loan and have to keep payments. I went out and bought a car. And I'm still driving that car today because luckily it's been really good. And what that's meant is that car over that 9 years means that I've, in effect, spent only 100 quid a year on it. Whereas if I'd have bought a car with payments, I'd have been paying payments and interest. So I'm not saying I'm clever. I'm not saying I'm anyone special. I'm just like you. You can do this. If you haven't got an emergency fund, please take my word. When I had this kidney done, I wasn't able to work for nearly 6 months. That's why you need an emergency fund. Do it for you, because it's important for you and it's your life. And why not make it just a little bit more comfortable? A little bit of short-term inconvenience of packing money away. And don't spoil yourself, just pack it away for a bit. And if it's too much for you, pack it away for a month, have a week or two off, go out for a meal, do what you want to do, and then start it again. As long as you continually carry on doing that, you'll put yourself in a position where life won't be the worst thing in the world should your car blow up or your boiler go. And that's about it, really. Hope that sort of makes sense to you. I'll see you next time. And if you click up there, there's another video that may well be useful to you. I'll see you next time.